Loving it.
All right, let's go. We're live. Oh, Jim, I thought you were going to start.
No, you're starting, John.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Think Wealth. Jim Nazinski and I are looking forward to talking with Jim Carter. We're going to be talking about some great things today. One of my favorite things, which is about giving and how we're looking at giving in 2020. Jim is the Vice President and Charitable Planning Consultant at Fidelity Charitable, an independent public charity that has helped donors support more than 300,000 nonprofit organizations. Jim, thanks for being here. Everything that you do, I can't think of anything better than to work to just, talk about how to give money to, people who need it. So thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me in, John.
Yeah, glad you're with us. I know by the time we're done talking, we'll have covered ways that people can give more to the charities they care about. We'll be able to save more in taxes as they do it, and make it easier to give. And Jim, I know you're chock full of ideas on that. I know that as a fact, so I look forward to doing that. But one thing that catches my eye before we get into that is that Fidelity Charitable, who you work for, is the largest grant maker in the country. And I think that's a surprise to many people. Can you give us some insight just quickly on what that means?
Oh, thanks. That's a great way to tee it up. You bet. So Fidelity Charitable, as John mentioned, we're a separate standalone public charity. We do have a service contract relationship with the big Fidelity, with which everyone is, of course, familiar. And what we do is donor advised funds, which is a way to facilitate people's charitable giving. And the key part in your question, Jim, is that we push money out to support charities on our donors' advice. So like this year so far, we've granted out just shy of $6.5 billion to nearly 200,000 different public charities. So we are quietly doing it at our donors' advice. We don't make a big deal about it, although we are 30 years old starting this quarter, so we're going to have some TV advertising. But we push it out, and yeah, we passed the Gates Foundation a couple of years ago as the largest grant-making organization in the country.
That's incredible. And how did you end up devoting your career to facilitating philanthropy in this way?
I started my career in the financial advice business a long time ago. And, you go through a lot of chairs and have had a really satisfying, great career, both as an advisor like yourself, Jim, directly with the public, and then working in the asset management side of the business. And as I think about the last few years of my career, there is nothing better than the opportunity to give back both of my time and energy and to facilitate clients like yours to really maximize their charitable giving.
I love that.
Great way to end up.
Yeah, right on, right, John?
We had a chair at the table.
I have a question. So, and I hear a lot of people talk about this, which is, what a great way to end up at this, at this chapter in this phase of my career. But rewind that for, the busy, person, parents, whomever, the person who's busy at their job, the person who's busy with their animals, right? I mean, it doesn't matter who they can, with their family, friends, but how do they still incorporate a little bit of that throughout their lives versus just kind of at the end? And I say that because I remember I met with someone who, about philanthropy and giving, and I was talking about like the end of my life, and they brought it up to me. Well, what about just a little bit throughout your life, right? Like, and I think people think like that, right? So how do they rewind and pause and just make it a part of their, every day?
That's an interesting question because, as a career choice, not all of us can dedicate a real career choice to giving. But Americans as a group are fantastically generous. Like as a percentage of economic activity, as a percentage of GDP, the United States is hugely ahead of the rest of the world, just off the chart on a nominal and a percentage basis. So people are actually giving. And I submit, and we can supply this paper if you want to share it, we did some research. The entrepreneur community is 50% more generous than the broader civilian population. So Americans are giving regularly, on average a few $1,000s a year, and the entrepreneur subgroup are significantly more generous of both their time and their treasure.
I love that.
So it is going on. And so what we try to do at Fidelity Charitable is help those people that are givers to maximize their opportunities to get more to their charities.
The tool, one of the tools that you use, you mentioned, is the donor advised fund. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to give a nutshell summary of what that is. The danger would be going into too much detail. So if you could, help people just with the framework. But I think, John, that's an answer to your question in part. If my running shoes are kept in a box in my attic, every time I want to run, I've got to go through that whole process of trying to find them and unwrap the box and put them on and tie the shoes. I'm less likely to run. But if I've got a system set up where the shoes are right by the door, I'm more likely to go for a jog. And I find giving, like any habit, is no different. I have great intent, but if it's hard and I got to figure out where and how do I make the donation, I got to write a check. I don't have any stamps. Wow. It gets more complicated. So sometimes just greasing the skids by making it easy increases the amount we can actually donate. And that, I know, is one of the benefits of utilizing a donor advised fund. I see it with our clients, and I'm sure, Jim, you probably have a white paper showing that that's actually true. But would you start with just letting us know what that tool is so we can then talk about it more?
You bet. So a donor advised fund is exactly what it sounds like. It's a fund in our context at Fidelity Charitable. It's a fund sponsored by a public charity. And so a gift gets made into the fund once or twice a year, whatever it is. And that's the tax deduction. That's the gift to charity. Now it is in the fund, and the donor will advise the charity to send funds to their downstream favorite organizations. And you're right, because it works on your phone, it works on your app. I'm guilty of this. I'm watching TV in a hotel room at 10:30, and there's some great story on Bloomberg. Like, that's a cool deal. Boom, 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 send them $100. Like, boom. Because it's in the bucket, the skids are greased, and out it goes. And I don't have to hunt for receipts. I don't have to have a stamp. The thing works on your Apple app. You can do it at a stoplight.
Yeah, one client I know we serve sets up their giving on automatic. So like they did make the decision once and the checks go out. That's pretty greasy skids right there.
It's pretty good. Yeah, about here at Fidelity Charitable, about 3/4 of our annual gifting is repeat gifts to the same charities. We have a system for automatic distributions, monthly or quarterly, support your church or whatever your charity is, to be part of their cash flow, which they love, right? And you're only making one decision. And then another quarter, you can think of them as tactical, where people have funds in the bucket and then something happens, say a global pandemic, and they have the money in storage to pump it out to get it to work. It's just it's super easy.
Let me ask you a question, Jim. How much has e-commerce helped charitable giving? Like you're talking about, right? You're watching Bloomberg and then boom, $100. And right now we're entering a decade where e-commerce is just going to accelerate faster than we've seen the last, 20 years. And so what has it done for giving, and what will it continue to do for giving?
That's great. So as we're sort of a leader in this space, and what we have spent a lot of time at Fidelity Charitable really making our donor and user experience as easy and sort of as familiar as possible, as all of us do nearly everything online, particularly this year, to have our donor experience really easy. So that's clearly the case. And the donor advised fund piece of the whole overall financial services industry has exploded. There are some sort of pure e-commerce platforms for donor advised funds where it's just all online, where they don't have me or anything. They just making it happen. So now there's, hundreds of thousands of donor advised funds out doing the work. It's been a great trend here at our operation. We've spent a lot of time in Treasurer making sure that we're ready. We've lowered our minimum account size to 0, because it's, as you say, we're in the e-commerce business to some degree, and it's completely scalable.
Yeah.
So someone can open a donor advised fund at Fidelity Charitable or one of the other providers. With you, there's no minimum. You could start with next to nothing. You can make a contribution in. If you're eligible for taking a tax deduction, you get a deduction at that moment. And then you can make grants out to end charities with the click of a button. And the minimum donation, I think, is $50. Is that right?
Yeah, the grant's out, it's $50.
Yeah. Yep. So certainly that makes it easier. We also have many donors say, yeah, can I be smart about taxes though? You mentioned this deduction. So let's come back to the deduction. Let's talk about one simple thing that I find many successful people miss, and that is the idea of donating something other than cash to charity. And it can be a hassle to do that, but I have found donor advised funds make that easier as well. Can you give us a nutshell of what that is and why that can save taxes for people supporting charity?
Sure. Most people, I would submit the three of us on this podcast, do their charitable giving and they use their checkbook. You know, they get the call from those nice people at your alma mater. They want $500. You look in your checkbook. All right, I got $500. I'll write them a check and I'll mail it to them. That's what most giving is, after tax, cash in your checking account. But the real leverage is where a donor or a giver's wealth is. We do a lot of work with appreciated securities, where, you know, if today you had a $20,000 position in Zoom, well, your basis is about $2,000. And if you sold that position, you'd pay $4,000 or $5,000 in capital gains taxes, right? But if you gave that position, say, to your donor advised fund, you would take a $20,000 tax deduction, and the embedded capital gains and the hassle of turning it into money to make the charitable gift is vaporized, right? So the charity directly receives the securities, the donor directly gets a fair market value tax deduction, and the embedded taxable event that we think of, which is why people don't rebalance their portfolios enough, the embedded tax consequences are transferred to the charity, which is a tax-free entity, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you can start to get some firepower in your charitable giving if you start to use assets that have, you know, embedded taxation in them or some sort of thing to fund your future in philanthropy. Because what would have gone to capital gains taxes in that scenario is instead included in your tax deduction and available for giving.
Yeah, you wouldn't know this, but today I'm on the phone with a CPA for a client, and we made the decision with the client to donate $130,000 to their Fidelity, Jim, to Fidelity's charitable donor advised fund. And for every $10,000 of that they give, I did the math, we're donating shares of stock that are in their investment account at Fidelity. For every $10,000 they give, they're saving about an extra $2,000 of tax that they otherwise wouldn't save if they gave cash.
And more importantly, the charity has that $2,000.
Yes. So you're supercharging how much actually ends up to the cause they care so much about.
That's right. That's correct.
And it's a pain to try to call up Mrs. McGillicuddy at the local church in the accounting office and try to get her to, you're going to give shares and where's the account, and you paperwork and it gets lost. But it's so easy for the shares to just go straight over into the donor advised fund. No fuss, no muss. And I think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, because most of our donors, most people in general, support multiple charities.
Yeah.
And the math of giving security, it works if you want to journal 6 shares of Facebook to your church. If they have the brokerage account to take it, and your financial advisor has the staff to transfer dinky pieces of securities all around town. And once again, now you're stuck with a stack of receipts.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you use, it's what we do, use a donor advised fund, you make one transfer, the receipt is a PDF, it lives on here, but you can't lose it. And then you can support multiple charities off the same single receipt. It makes the end of March relationship with your spouse significantly better.
Wow. Well, this is like a PhD. This is a PhD and in giving. And I just want to kind of point out why, in my opinion, people need advisors like the two of you, right? or whomever, because this is very complicated stuff. This is very, and I think sometimes people, are hesitant to jump in because maybe it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
With the right advisors, it's easy, right? Because you don't have to study it. You don't have to memorize it. I don't need to know how my phone is made. It just works for me. And I know, so I think for the person who's listening, who knows what they want to accomplish, who knows what they want to give, but doesn't have the time to do the research and understand, to me, I think I just want to throw out from my perspective, it's so important to just pick up the phone and call a Jim Nazinski, a Jim Carpenter, to really dissect and begin the journey or accelerate the journey of your giving, right? So just my 2 cents. My 2 cents as the dumbest person in the room right now.
I'll fight you for that. We should all arm wrestle for that title.
Right. Rock, paper, scissors. But no,
yeah.
I love listening to it. I love learning about it, but it's complicated, and that shouldn't intimidate somebody to reach out to a resource that can help them streamline it for them. Yeah,
and Jim, do people work with Fidelity Charitable directly? They don't have to go through an advisor. If an advisor is a fit, that's obviously the right thing, but they can just work and get good counsel, and you have videos and information on the website. And so how do people find your Fidelity Charitable? I imagine you'd start with Googling Fidelity Charitable and you'll arrive at your doorstep.
You can Google Fidelity Charitable and you get there pretty quickly. You could Google donor advised funds and you'd get probably the same links. Yeah. And if you come in through that, and so as you might guess, we do have quite a robust website for people to come, fidelitycharitable.org, and they can learn all kinds of things. A significant amount of our donors come with a financial advisor or some sort of advisor, right? Yeah. So maybe their accountant says you need to do this charitable, stack up or bunch up multiple charitable gifts to get a good deduction this year. Right. You should take a look at a donor advised fund. So the sourcing is quite diverse, and we're ready to facilitate. We have a very active business supporting the financial ecosystem, the financial advisors, estate planning attorneys, deal attorneys, that whole sort of advice ecosystem, as well as a significant amount of our clients are, direct.
I love it.
They come right in the website. Takes 2 seconds.
Jim Carpenter, are you ready for a quick speed round?
Sure. Fire away.
You have a lot. It looks like you got a lot of really good books right there. What's your favorite book and why?
Oh my gosh. My favorite book and why is not on the shelf, but if you have not read Humankind, which is on the bestseller list right now by Rutger Bremen, I think. Humankind. That is my number one favorite book at the moment.
Wow. I like this.
It's and he doesn't pay me. But,
so it's Humankind. Humankind?
Yes.
Not by Brad Aronson.
No.
Oh, by A Hopeful History.
A Hopeful History.
Okay. Yeah, 1,500 plus great reviews. All right, Jim. Next question.
Yeah. How would you, in like a sentence, just describe how people would go about figuring out which charity to give to? It's a real technical question, but when you're figuring out a cause, you mentioned just giving money, but right. What if people don't know? What would you suggest they do to reflect on how to figure that out? Because this is all great if you know what you want to give to, but I know quite a few people who don't.
Yeah. There's a couple of answers to that. I had a nice conversation this morning with one of our top consultants on that. And we're coming into Thanksgiving. Giving Tuesday is right around the corner. This is a great time to have the conversation with yourself and your family about what's important. If you were the Gates Foundation, who would you give money to? Is it feeding children? Is it literacy programs? Is it homeless? Is it a faith organization? Think about what's important to you either individually or as a family, what would be satisfying. And then you can begin to dial down. And then there are organizations that can help with that. Charity Navigator is a great one.
Yes.
We use GuideStar, which is a more diverse because it's tax reporting stuff. Sounds like a commercial, but at fidelitycharitable.org, you can find our research tools to facilitate that. Or, like for me, we have some giving lists on our website of people whose names you would recognize and the charities they support. Maybe just let them do the research for you. But there's a lot of ways to do it, and it's the giving season, so your mailbox will be full for the next 4 weeks.
All right. Last question, Jim. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Oh my gosh.
That's a take the glasses off question right there.
Take the glasses off question. Here's the best piece of wisdom I ever seen, and this is for you, Jim. Make that one more call.
Yeah. Well said. Jim, tell everybody, Jim Carpenter, tell everybody how they can connect with you and get a hold of you.
They can get a hold of me. They can get to us at fidelitycharitable.org. They can get to me either through Jim or directly come in through the website, ask to speak to one of our people, and you can call us up and it'll percolate through. The thing about Fidelity Charitable, as the largest granting organization, we have a nationwide regional network of people available to help donors maximize their charitable giving.
Jim, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a huge master's PhD class for me. I appreciate all that you're doing to be part of all this giving. It must be like how fulfilling it must be what you expressed. So I appreciate you sharing and helping others understand what that journey and path looks like. I'll let Jim close it, and then he needs to read his Jim statements.
Yes. Thanks again. Thanks a ton, Jim. You're doing awesome work. Appreciate you. And I, Jim, am a registered investment advisor who offers investment advisory services through Motive Wealth Advisors, the DBA of True Independence Asset Management, a registered investment advisor with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Any material discussed is intended for informational purposes only. It should not be construed as legal or tax advice and is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified attorney or tax advisor. This information is not an offer or solicitation to buy or sell securities. The information contained may have been compiled from third-party sources and is believed to be reliable. Play ball.
All right, and I'm John Dwoskin, simply a business coach with no compliance.
No disclosure required.
No disclosures. Jim Nizinski, always great, filled with great information. Thank you. Jim,
Fun to be with you.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
See ya.